So I'm going to now turn this session, turn toward the final session will be moderated by Dr. Jacoby Carter. And for those of you who didn't meet him earlier, he is a professor and chair of the Department of Philosophy at Howard University. Dr. Carter.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be back with you again for this wonderful and enriching program, and to join you for the last session of the day. So we have 3 scholars with us that are going to bring it all home, if you will, and leave us hopefully with some very encouraging and profound things to ponder in conjunction with those things that have been offered throughout the day thus far. The final session is entitled The Necessity of Uncomfortable Conversations. And we have with us Kathryn Kawecki, Dr. Lynn McKinley-Grant, and Jill Vasbinder Morrison. The presenters will go in the order that they're listed in the program. And so first up is Ms. Kathryn Kawecki, Assistant Professor, Dr. Kathryn Kawecki, Assistant Professor at Bowie State of Theater Arts. And her talk is entitled Uncomfortable Conversations in Community with Students Through Their Eyes, BSU Executive Student Producers, Perspectives on What Works and How It Feels.
Thank you so much. I'm not a doctor, I'm Professor Kawecki, but thank you for the introduction. And I will actually be joined both in video and live a little bit at the end with a few of the student executive producers that I work with and that I'm blessed to work with in the theater arts program. And I thought it was important when I thought about uncomfortable conversations to remember that we don't just have to have the uncomfortable conversations, but we have to prepare our classroom spaces to have these conversations as well. And so this really is asking for students to weigh in on what it means to make your classroom spaces feel comfortable for the uncomfortable. And so I'm going to jump into video, and my students are going to introduce themselves in the video and then share their thoughts and question each other.
Hello and welcome. My name is Nathaniel Hatchett. I'm a senior theater arts major with a focus in acting and directing. I'm also a BSU student executive producer and of the political actions and community outreach chair under SGA, the senior class.
Hello, my name is Raquel Foyer, and I am a sophomore theater arts major with a concentration in acting and directing.
Hi, my name is Ryan Anthony. My preferred pronouns are he, him, his, and I am a junior theater arts major with a concentration in acting and directing at the illustrious Bowie State University.
Hello, my name is Daniel Young. I am a junior theater arts major with a concentration in acting and directing at Bowie State University.
Hi everyone, my name is Kristen Young. I am currently a sophomore theater arts major with a concentration in dance at Bowie State University. I am also one of the founding members of the Student Executive Producers Board, and I am so honored to be able to be speaking to you all today.
Thank you, Kristen. One of my students recently said to me, faculty mean well. They try, but they can never really understand. And in this case, my student was Black and I was white, and he was specifically talking about white faculty trying to be in conversations about race. And I had to admit that I never could fully understand as much as I wanted to be supportive. I think that as faculty members, we also forget that we can't really understand what it feels like to be students anymore. It's been a while for many of us. And if we're going to have uncomfortable conversations in the classroom, we need to take steps that make sure our students feel safe to participate in those conversations and that they really feel included in those conversations. So we as a group talked about ways faculty could do that, could make students feel safe and could make students feel included. And really it's the ideas of the students that are most important here, because we can mean well and we can try, but if we're not giving them a chance to tell us how it really feels, are we really responding? With that said, all classes deliver information, and hopefully that's going to help students learn and grow. But Kelly, how can instructors best deliver content in a way that's going to make students feel safe, included, and really interested in learning?
Instructors can make their class feel safe, included, and interested in learning by giving a disclaimer before sharing certain content with their class. That disclaimer helps the students know that, hey, what's in what I'm sharing is offensive, but I actually want to prepare you for that instead of just blindsiding you with a whole bunch of things that could offend you and make you upset. Another thing that you should do as an instructor is reading the room, paying attention to how your students respond to certain discussions and how they respond to the things that you share in class will help you understand how to share different things in your lectures, and it also makes them feel like you genuinely care about what you're teaching them and their opinions on what you're teaching them. And the last thing that is important to do is not trying to push a certain discussion that's being had in class into a certain direction that's not going in, because it feels like you're trying to push your own lecture onto their opinions in the topic that's being had at the time. And it also helps them feel like they can have more discussions without feeling like they're stuck in a box that their instructor is putting them in. But that reminds me of the next question, which is for Kristen. Does it help students feel safe and included if an instructor takes the time to be human with their class?
I can actually speak from personal experience for this question. And I know that when a professor or mentor or teacher, whoever it is, allows their students to see them as human, see their weaknesses along with their strengths, it opens up so much more room for honest conversation, for people to be comfortable in their presence, for trust to be built. And I remember in 2020 when we were all having such a hard time, and when Professor Kawecki allowed us time in class to be able to speak candidly about the things that we were going through, and for her to be able to open up as well, it made our class much more valuable for me as a student. And so I feel as though that humanness is probably one of the most positive and influential things as a professor that you can provide to your students. Our next question is, how can instructors think about their overall course timeline to help students build trust and continue to take part in uncomfortable conversations, for example, ones about race?
When it comes to thinking about the course plan throughout the entirety of the course, I think it's important for professors to start early and really take time to dig deep into what they're considering bringing to their students content-wise. I think it's very hard to have an uncomfortable conversation, say race, for example. As an HBCU, we want to have conversations about being Black, and it's hard to have conversations like that and get into deeper conversations when we only have a conversation once throughout the semester. I think of it as kind of like the Black History Month conversation. Like, we start off with very Eurocentric concepts of theater. We start off with like Stanislavski and people like that, and then we skip over to August Wilson for Black History Month, and then right back to Chekhov. So I think it's important for professors to really consider having a consistent flow, so that it's not just one part of the like one class where you're having a conversation and then it becomes a surface conversation of just drama. I think if you spread it out throughout the course of the entire semester, it would make conversations easier to really get deeper into it and allow people to feel open to have deeper conversations. I guess which brings us to the next question, which for Ryan, how do you think professors can keep in mind, or what do you think professors can keep in mind when considering like tone and interaction with students, especially students that they haven't worked with before, and how they can find a way to keep the conversations going?
That is a great question, Daniel. Honestly, in terms of what students can do in order to kind of break that ice, I think being comfortable with being uncomfortable is the biggest thing, and understanding that it has to be a judgment-free environment, seeing as that we're all trying to figure out where the next step is or what to do in order to go to the next step. And I think having that vulnerability and openness to be able to maybe say the controversial statement is what's going to be key. So I'll ask you, Nate, seeing as that, a lot of the teachers here teach at PWIs, what is it that students with majority white classes can do to help the, students who are maybe non-white feel, welcome to the environment? Does it change whether or not the conversation moves to a conversation about race?
Thank you, Ryan, for that question. Objectively speaking, school itself should be something that's multicultural. For example, we live in a westernized society, and we focus more so on Eurocentric values than all values in all cultures. But school itself should be something that's for everybody. So, have y'all ever heard of the term "everybody eats"? Well, if not, you'll hear it today. Though your classes may be predominantly white and have few non-white students, each culture should be reflected through the curriculum. For example, I'm a theater major, and throughout my course of my college experience, we've learned more so about Eurocentric ideals rather than just acting methods in general that reflect all cultures, or an identity that responds to someone like myself. So I've heard about Shakespeare, I heard about Stanislavski, but what about the Hendrix method? Or if I'm a philosopher, what about Toni Morrison? What about James Baldwin? These aren't just for black students, or these aren't just for non-white students. These are for everyone. These teachings are for everyone. So a curriculum should be multicultural. And to say, should these conversations be strictly about race? Everything's about race, whether we like to admit it or not, if you are oppressed. Because, like I said, we live in this society, and if I don't look like this society, the society doesn't represent what I need. As a unit, we thank you for your time, and we hope you enjoyed the rest of this conference. Bowie, stayed out.
Okay, so that was very quickly. They tried to be as quick as they could to get as much in as we could to share some of their knowledge. And I just invite you all to remember what a learning resource you have for yourself in your students. And if you're able to have the opportunity to really invite your students to be in community with you, because there is really no greater gift than I have received in my teaching than to be allowed really, and to be blessed with being in community with my students, and to be able to have hard conversations, and being in community with them is what allows that to happen. I know they won't really get a chance to talk now, but they might be available for question and answers if there's time for that. Ryan Anthony and Daniel Young are in the room with us today live. And with that, thank you for your time.
Well, thank you so much for that. Our next speaker is Dr. Lynn McKinley-Grant, Associate Professor in the Department of Dermatology in College of Medicine at Howard University. Dr. Grant is going to give us a talk today entitled The Art of Medicine. Skin colors matter in uncomfortable conversations about health disparities in medical education. Please join me in welcoming Dr. McKinley-Grant.
Thank you. I must say the last presentation was, I almost don't have to give mine. I can give another pedagogy that we can use, but was just excellent. Thank you, and thank you to the students. And you have no idea how much this whole conference has meant to me listening to this, and how much the House of Medicine really needs every one of you. We need to get the whole series over to your medical schools, out to the physicians, there's so many things in the arts and humanities that you have to contribute to have uncomfortable conversations, and they're just tools that we can use that will really help to decrease healthcare disparities. Skin color and ethnicity are self-identifiable properties, and that's one very uncomfortable conversation in medicine. Skin colors actually matter because disease can present in different colors and if the background color of the skin is brown, that is a difference. So we're going to kind of explore that so that you can understand how we have to go about these difficult conversations. I was fortunate enough in August in 2014, I was in Martha's Vineyard, and it was just a beautiful weekend. Congressman Lewis was running for Congress and for re-election. And so this was a gathering to honor him, and he made a point to meet everyone. And somehow it was mentioned I was at the museum, and he couldn't understand, well, how you're in Martha's Vineyard, why weren't you at the beach and you were at the museum? So I explained to him that I've had this revelation, I guess it was back in 2014, how we could really use the arts to help physicians make better diagnoses, have more empathy for their patients, and really understand different cultures. And he said to me, well, I've never heard of anything like that. He said, but, and you can see how he's listening. And he said, but I really would encourage you to do that, because you seem to really think that that's going to work. And so I was looking at something from him. This actually encouraged me to get the application in also for this symposium. And I'm so glad I did. So one of the things with museums is that when you walk in a room of a museum, it's very calm. You take a group of students to look at art, and you say, well, what does that have to do with medicine? Well, you really have to observe in medicine. You have to use, really all of your senses, and you have to be able to describe and communicate to people what you see and what your findings are and what your potential diagnosis is. And it's always, it's not that easy to do. And especially having, as the students mentioned, people on different levels see things differently, and people from different backgrounds see things differently. So as a faculty person, you have people who are students who are in the hospital, you're on rounds, you ask them to describe things. Well, you actually know more than they do generally, and you may be critical. In medicine, we call it pimping, that you keep asking the student over and over again, what's that, what's that, go further, go further. But in a museum, you can all come in at different levels, and you can look at a painting, and in medicine, a lot of people aren't into the arts, but you can come in and you can interpret things differently. You're going to see things differently. This is a painting of a synecdoche, which means parts of the whole. And Byron Kim has done the series of different skin colors. He actually takes a piece of canvas and wraps it around the wrist. And then with about 15, 16 different colors of paint, he captures the person's skin color. And he calls these portraits. Each panel is about 8 by 11. So I'm going to ask you today, I'm going to give you one of my minutes. Actually, I'll give you 2 of my minutes, but 1 minute will be later. But 1 minute with this painting to just in the chat, to just put down every color that you see. Everybody open their chat and just pour in the colors. I also want you to tell me how many men, women, and children are in this picture. And you will have 1 minute to do that.
I'm sorry, I need to jump in because I think many of us are not seeing your screen. Are you sharing?
Oh, no, really? Oh, I am. Oh, dear. Did you see it before or?
No, we haven't seen a presentation from you.
Oh, dear. Okay, sorry. Let's see. How could that happen? Let me just see, because I hit share screen. Let me go back to Zoom. Okay. Oh, I'm so sorry. No. Okay, you see that. Okay.
Now we're seeing, yes.
Okay, so let me just go through. This was the conversation I was having with John Lewis, and you can see he's listening very intently. And this is my husband here, who was listening only because John Lewis was listening, I'm sure. But this is the Byron Kim exhibit with the 500 pieces of portraits in different shades of skin color that he was able to put in a canvas. And it's a whole room at the National Gallery, and it's trying to show the calmness of a room in the museum and how you can go, a very safe place, a room in a museum. So the next slide where we were was for you to look at this painting. And I'm not going to tell you anything about it. Some of you may know it, but I just want you to write in the chat the colors that you see, just as quickly as you can. And we'll just do 30 seconds. So what colors, what shades of colors, and also how many people, how many men and how many women are in the painting. And we'll, like I said, we'll do 30 seconds. And this is, there is no right or wrong answer with this. You can't be wrong, you can't kill a painting. So that's how I get the medical students to kind of relax. There's nothing wrong you can say in terms of listing various colors. So I think that's about it. Okay. So one of the things, this tool of taking medical students to the museum or just a piece of art in the hospital, and Howard has art all over the place. So you can stop in the hall and look at pieces of art, but you're trying to develop cultural visual acuity. You want to develop tolerance for ambiguity and uncertainty. And everyone says, well, I don't want a doctor who's going to be uncertain about anything. But the more experience you have, the less uncertainty you have. But so when you start off, you want to really admit that you have uncertainty and ambiguity so that you search for a definite answer. You want to use the arts to develop critical thinking skills. Empathy is so important because you can really learn what people, we're all humans. This is another factor, I think, with the arts, and we're human, not 3/5, we're 100% human. And you learn that everyone has, feelings, bodily functions, all the things that humans do. And these are things you can experience from art. Cultural competency and humility, storytelling, you end up using the artwork, piece of art, to tell the story, what's going on. That's like telling the diagnosis. And a doctor can take those same skills and bring them to patient care. Prevention of physician burnout. So that's really important now because that means decrease medical error and decrease medical costs because of the error, and decrease morbidity and mortality, which are the most important reasons to prevent physician burnout. So melanin-rich skin is beautiful. There are all of these colors, they're brown, different shades of brown, different ethnicities. Race is really a social construct. We really, we don't divide scientifically. There's no evidence of races, but there are different skin colors, and there are different ethnicities, of course. But we've created this whole, caste, colorism, racism structure. But in science, we don't see that. Okay, the race, they're just not four races. But there is racism that exists by people who think that anyone brown is brown and different than they are. But if you look at these colors, they're all very beautiful because they all have a little bit of red in them, right? They're not just strictly brown. And this is one of Byron Kim's paintings also that has more red mixed into the panels, okay? But that red is actually caused by the amount of oxygen you have in your blood and the amount of hemoglobin or red blood cells that you have. This is a portrait of George Floyd, before he was murdered and after he was murdered. And with the knee on the neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, he went from brown, because he lost it, to gray. And gray and pale is not recognized in medicine. There's not in the textbooks, they talk about people that are pale. They're in either less blood, less oxygen, but they will describe it only in white skin. And a lot of people will say, well, in black skin, you can't see if somebody's pale. But if you're their mother or their father or their parent, you can see that paleness. And so one of my missions is now to get physicians to see this, because this is very obvious. And this is not far from where how he looked, even though it's a painting of that. So that's where color matters in skin, okay, and in medicine. So different colors, not just the melanin in the skin. So I'm going to give you another task in the same paintings, which is The Great Migration of Jacob Lawrence. And I want you in the chat again to put in what you think these people are doing or feeling. Let's put feeling for some of them, that you might know, but what do you think they're feeling? What emotions do they have? What are they concerned about? Are they concerned about where they've come from or where they're going? And again, we'll do, I think I just have 30 seconds. We'll do 30 seconds. Yeah, just so we don't run out of time.
Yeah, if you just take the last 30 seconds and then concluding remarks.
Okay, so time's up. So let me conclude I'll conclude. Sorry. So I just want to thank you for for inviting me to, and just to say that this is really a call for action to bring the arts and humanities into medicine. The one painting that you were just looking at really does allow to have a lot of uncomfortable conversations about race. When I presented this at the Quantico, there's some generals who were all white, they couldn't bring it to say that they were Black people. They saw refugees. They didn't see Black people. They just saw the silhouettes. And maybe it was objective, but I don't know. But they saw more refugees than the ethnicity of the patients. So we're trying to bring the arts to improve humanity and improve patient care and create fewer health disparities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If everyone could join me in thanking Dr. McKinley-Grant for that wonderful talk. And so now we've come to our third and final panelist. Professor Jill Vasbinder Morrison is Senior Lecturer in the Department of Dance at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. And she is going to give us a talk entitled Moving Dance Steps, Challenge, Decolonize, Engage. Welcome to Professor Morrison.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I'm so honored to be with all of you here today. And I'm going to begin the way I have been beginning other events in the dance field lately, which is I'd like to let you know that I am speaking to you from the stolen lands of the Piscataway, the Nantego, and the Susquehannock peoples. I am a light-skinned woman with medium brown hair, wavy and shoulder length that's pulled black, and I have hazel eyes. I'm wearing a cream-colored sweater and a copper wire frame necklace. And then I'll begin. So since the first collegiate dance program in 1926 at the University of Wisconsin-Madison in the Department of Physical Education, dance artists have been struggling to legitimize their pursuits in the eyes of the academy. In 1936 at Bennington College, we saw the first course in the history of dance taught by John Martin, not a historian, but a dance critic for the New York Times, a critic who some believed was policing the boundaries of dance history. And I share with you a photograph of him. I just was sent to me recently by a woman who took the photograph herself, who met John Martin. The struggle at this time was moving dance from dance as exercise to dance as art. It's a work in progress that even in Maryland institutions was just happening 8 years ago. To make this move, dance programs focused on the very intellectualized field of modern dance, a form dominated by white women and some white men who were swept up in the Orientalism and the exotic as the rest of the country. Modern dance was seen and often still is taught to have a lineage that goes from cave paintings to the Renaissance courts of Europe to Romantic and classical ballet, and landing in the United States to pave the way for this modern dance, thus leaving out African dance forms and putting them in a prehistory that equates current tribal practices as the same as prehistoric dances, skipping the indigenous dances of the land we occupy and the mighty influences of the dances of the Africans brought to the United States through slavery. My own journey in teaching dance studies began a decade ago here at UMBC, and it came after teaching dance as a social practice and dance as an art form for the previous 15 years. I was handed a textbook that followed the lineage I just outlined. I supplemented that textbook with a unit on kabuki as a comparison in classical forms, and had to squeeze in all the dance in the US for 3 centuries into one short chapter. I began to abandon this approach first by adding in article after article, and then adding a second textbook plus more articles. And finally, I've settled on relieving the students of the burdensome expense of textbooks we just heard about with our OER conversation, and creating my own course reader, so to speak, using chapters from books, articles, films, movement experiences that could be inclusive of many perspectives through the use of the library reserves. This approach has allowed the students agency in guiding the course focus and has allowed me to prioritize the dance forms and their origins that the students engage with on a daily basis. I begin courses with the African American lineages of dance, thus not running out of time for them when we hit the end of the term. We start with social dance, where the dance resides in their lives. Students are invited to share the most recent dance-related posts from their social media feeds, and these we revisit throughout the semester as the material continually connects to what they've shared. We read, watch, and practice vernacular jazz and tap. Here you see the Nicholas Brothers. These forms connect to commercial dance, to hip hop, to contemporary ballet. We can see the indigenization of 2 global dance forms, both hip hop and ballet. In one semester, 2 years ago, we were discussing blackface, American minstrelsy, stock characters of the 1800s. A student raised their hand to point out something they had just seen. It was a Childish Gambino video of This Is America. It had been released the previous week, and they recognized a posture from the images in my presentation where we were connecting stock characters to the issues raised in Spike Lee's Bamboozled. Here are some of those images. You can see on the left, Childish Gambino, and on the right, Jim Crow, a drawing, as well as the expressions of Childish Gambino compared to the minstrel show face. I have since built these into my curriculum. In Dance 201 and 101, I'm careful not to talk only about the non-Eurocentric African dance forms within this prehistoric, primitive, and tribal dance form, but I make sure the students know that the African court dances are a part of the discussion that goes with European court dances, Japanese and Javanese court dances. As a course structure, students are given choice, ownership, and the ability to identify and connect. Early in the course, we create these community or class agreements. I suggest some, the students propose parameters, and we discuss. Here are some. Some of my favorites are the ones the students have brought, like Some. They created that on the spot. Speak Up More. And Wait, Why Am I Talking? And of course, the really important ones like Honor Your Legacies, right? Know where it came from and name it. Students direct the subject areas of the course when I remind them that history is about asking questions. From there, I ask them to create 3 questions that they would like to have answered during this course, and I ask what area of the world or dance style they would like to learn more about. Most of the time, we're already going to cover these requests, but I also address any new suggestions and add them in. They're also given choice with most assignments in terms of presentation format. It can be written, it can be visual, it can be verbal, it can be movement, of course. These are dance courses. And of course, this is even easier now with online and hybrid teaching. Students have responded in a variety of ways, saying things such as, I didn't know the dance I do came from there, or I thought dance was just ballet or on a stage. Using this approach, legitimizes their experience as dance and brings it into the academic space. Not that the academic space has to legitimize their dance. I recall the laughter and blushing the first semester I asked students about the social dances they do now. Shyly, one of them said twerking. So I wrote it on the board, and then we learned about its African origins. Here on the screen, you see some feedback the students gave during a masterclass with hip hop artist Q Arnold. And some of these, my favorite, it's a completely different vocabulary, and now we can name it. Or, and me being a woman of color, I definitely appreciate being taught where the roots are because I know it was from there, but nobody really says it. So this has been a process over several years as I navigate and revise. Some struggles I've had along the way include the discomfort I feel in being the gatekeeper. With some of the tools I mentioned earlier, I attempt to allow the students to share this responsibility with me. I invite them to not only be gatekeepers, but locksmiths and lockbreakers, a term I recently gathered from the Black Light Summit at College Park. I find that I never have enough time to cover everything I wish to cover, and that I find new things nearly every day that I feel should be important and share with the students. One example is that in a recent semester, while front-loading the course with African American origins and legacies of dance, I had not left adequate time for studying Native American and Indigenous dances. I acknowledged this with the class and asked what would be a meaningful approach to them. I got many suggestions on where to include that material, as well as what they thought we could spend less time or leave out or to make room. We discussed the importance of being clear that when we study one Native American dance, we are not generalizing that this represents all Native American dance, that this is only one example in a field that is as broad and far-reaching as African dance. So as we decolonize dance studies, approach the subject from a non-Eurocentric viewpoint, we engage our students with styles of dance they encounter on a daily basis, and these styles that form the foundation of their cultural expression. When we include these forms and prioritize them in the required coursework of their fields, we legitimize and increase their understanding of themselves and the communities surrounding them. I move, literally and figuratively, against my own training and education in the field of dance to decolonize, diversify, and challenge the notions of dance history, dance appreciation, and dance writing courses. In doing this work, I have been able to connect my work in inclusion and diversity to the field of dance for dance majors, dance minors, and even the students of all the other fields that come into my courses. Thank you.
Please join me in thanking all of our panelists for this final session. And I will turn the floor over to AP Dark and Dr. Berman.
Well, I'll tell you, wow. That panel, that was quite a panel. Very good. Thank you so much.